Since the release of Civilization 7, a lot of players who haven't enjoyed the game have been waiting for an update or patch meaningful enough to bring them back in. I think the most recent patch, 1.2.5, might be the first update that meets that standard, and I'm here today to walk you through it and talk about why I think it's a win for Firaxis, for Civilization 7, and for people who may not have enjoyed the game so far but might want to hop back into it. I've played several games on the new patch, and it's made a huge difference to me as a player, so the first thing I want to talk about is the user interface updates. Now, as we are all well aware, the user interface for Civilization 7 is not very good, and there's still lots of work to do. For instance, if I come into the Resource tab, why can't I sort these in any meaningful way? That's crazy. What I'm here, though, to talk about are the positive improvements this patch made to not only the user interface, but to the gameplay experience the user interface provides. The first big update was in the building production menu. If I come into Chang'an here, one of my cities, and click on a building, I will now receive more information about the placement details. This initial display now gives me more information that I found very useful as a player. I can see the base yield of this cannery here is 9 food. I can also see that I could gain an extra 5 food because of an adjacency bonus. If I come to a building like the grocer, I can see that I'll gain 4 food, but 9 on the warehouse bonus this provides. There's a lot more information on this screen. Now, the user interface giving you more information is a good thing, but not inherently game-changing. What makes this amazing is that I can see from a glance exactly how to best utilize my buildings. The base yields are always going to be the same every single game. It doesn't matter what game I load into, the military academy is always going to have a 9 base yield. What helps you improve as a player and make better decisions and feel more immersed in those decisions is this extra information here. With this patch, building placement is more important, and maximizing the yields on your buildings is essential to kind of getting the best out of your game. If I can see I'm getting a +5 adjacency on a gold building here and a +5 food adjacency on a food building here, I might put these together in a quarter for a total of 10 extra yields I wasn't getting before. I can see at a glance that these buildings are very efficient in the city I can build them in. If I slide up here to this laboratory and I'm only going to get 2 adjacency, I might decide that this building is not very efficient in the city. Now, there's a lot more decision making that goes into which buildings you're going to place and where you're going to place them, but this menu just gives you more information, and that information is way more useful in understanding how to build your cities and which decisions might be best for you. When you go to place the building, things are well improved as well. So let's click on the radio station here and take a look at this screen. Once again, this screen is just better because it gives you more information. So on a surface level, this is way more information than you had before about placing your buildings. Separately, though, this is useful information, it's helpful information, and really kind of immersed me in my city building and helped me better understand the game and make better decisions as a player. The first change I really love on this screen is simply these green arrows and red arrows, letting me know what yields I will gain and what yields I will lose when I put a building on a tile. Helps me better understand how these buildings and tiles are functioning, but also helps me at a glance understand what is happening in my cities and helps me make better decisions. Without knowing very much about the game at all, I can already make some reasonable decisions here. If I go to these tile improvements, I can see that losing 6 production, 8 gold, 1 science, and 7 culture for a gain of 6 happiness and 9 influence is maybe not ideal, especially when that's compared to gaining 12 happiness, so double, and 9 influence for only 1 gold and 3 culture as a loss. You can see just at a glance here that placing it on this tile would gain far more for your city and for your empire than placing it on this one. There still might be good reasons for placing things on this tile. Maybe you want to build a wonder over there, maybe the quarter and the adjacency is going to get really good, etc., etc. However, just seeing exactly what you're losing and understanding the weight of this decision, that if I put something on this tile, I would be losing exactly this many yields, and that amount of yields is a lot, is very, very helpful as a player. On the left-hand side, this is also illustrated with green arrows and red arrows, which is wonderful, but if you click the space bar, it'll also kind of break everything down into a before and after so you can better understand what's happening. I also love that this shows you the net values. If I click this military academy here, you can see it's going to give me +9 production and +2 on one of the tiles as an adjacency. But if I click it as a production building, and I come to this tile to overbuild, you'll see I'm only gaining 3 production. Well, that's because I'm overbuilding a production building, so it's already accounting for the production I'm going to lose on this tile, and kind of accounting that as a net +3, which is really, really great for understanding how certain buildings can overbuild overbuild on a building of their type. In any case, I thought the changes to the building menu were incredible. In my 3 games on this patch, I've had a much better time constructing my cities. I feel like I better understand what's happening with all my buildings and all the tiles in my empire, and I feel like I just have a better time kind of interacting with a core aspect of the game, which I think is really important in a game that is, kind of like a city builder. Overall, I think the updates to the building menu are a huge improvement for Civilization 7. In my 3 games on this patch since it released, I've had a much better time navigating the building menu, placing my buildings down, understanding what's happening, and I feel way more enabled to make good decisions and make strategic decisions when I'm placing buildings in my empire, which is exactly what you want in like a 4x city building game, so this is an A+ home run from Firaxis on this change. I also completely forgot to mention, when you go to place a building, it'll highlight some tiles that it thinks might be a good spot for those buildings by making the numbers green. Also a great little change for newer players to recommend them some options without telling them exactly what to do. The next update from a user interface point of view was the Grow City and Grow Town menu, a very similar change to the building menu. Some simple changes here, but again, very good for understanding what is going on and enabling you to make good decisions and give you helpful information. If you go to place things on a rural tile, it is going to tell you what you'll gain from that improvement, which is awesome. It'll also tell you kind of what that improvement is. If you go to place a specialist, it'll tell you what you are going to gain, what you are going to lose for the specialist maintenance, and crucially, how many specialists you have on that tile and how much more room there is to go. I felt this change to be less meaningful overall to my city building. I already had a much better grasp of how the specialists were working than the buildings at times. However, this was more clear, this was more interesting. I had a better time in this menu because I'm either rooting around and can now kind of dig deeper into each of my decisions, or because I have more information presented to me in an easier way, I can more quickly click through this screen and get to other aspects of the game I'm enjoying, so I spend less time kind of bogged down by choosing my growth or my specialist, so I really appreciate that. There are some other user interface updates as well. I've really loved this start menu that tells me the mods and the add-ons. I can click the advanced options and see what the settings for my game are, the legacy path settings, etc, etc. So some small user interface changes on the margins as well, but all quite meaningful. Some great user interface changes overall. I'm just hopeful in the next patch they'll let me choose which building on a tile I'm overbuilding instead of just automatically picking the first one. However, we'll take what we can get when we can get it. This was the first kind of big, meaty, meaningful change to the user interface that I think makes a big difference to the gameplay. The next update in this patch I think is amazing is to the subscribe button. I heard if you click the subscribe button and turn your notifications on, you will get more videos exactly like this put into your feed on the YouTube front page, and you'll always have something entertaining to watch. It'll also make me very happy for what that's worth to you, so you can kind of make that judgment yourself. Anyways, back to the patch. Next up is the map generation. We have a new system in for generating maps, and it's much better. In the 3 games I have played on this patch, I've got 3 very different and exciting and unique maps that all felt really fun to play, so we can call this a huge victory. The goal here was to make sure each map wasn't a blocky mess, with 2 kind of block continents with the distant land islands in the middle, and I'd say this is a huge success. This is a Pangaea map, and you can see all the curves and lumps and lakes and kind of navigable rivers. You can see how it's very far from like a couple of square blocks. There are some little islands, which is really exciting, but there are some really cool little rivers and ways to navigate through the map as well. The biomes seem really well done. I feel like there's enough different resources and terrain features and all of that to be really interesting. You can get a lot of different towns and cities and adjacencies on these maps. I find them really well done. Another map I really loved was a continents map I played as Xerxes. I will put that on the screen as well, but overall we can confidently say that these map generation systems are a huge improvement, a welcome upgrade, and each game feels way more unique and not arbitrary, these like blocky continental maps that we were dealing with before, so we're going to call this a huge victory as well. The next change that I think is really well done and makes the game a lot better is the change to how building production is calculated. Previously in your Civ 7 games, you were pretty used to being able to buy every building in every city you had. As long as you got the adjacencies right, you can make very powerful cities very easily. This obviously reduces the strategy of the game quite a bit. If you can get every building in every city, you're less concerned with what yields are you getting, what adjacencies are you getting, what effects are you getting from the buildings. The game kind of lacks a lot of depth and strategy when you can just get everything in every city. So if you're not familiar, here are the changes to building production. For every building you get in a settlement, the next building in that settlement will have its production increased by 5%. This means every subsequent building within a settlement becomes more expensive with either production or gold to purchase. This laboratory currently costs 1,365 production, but if I were to go and build the department store first, the cost of the laboratory would increase by 5% because there's one more building in the settlement to account for. If you were to upgrade a town to a city, you are obviously helped out by the fact that you are starting from zero, so every building you have will incur that 5%. So if you're creating new cities, you might still have some fairly cheap buildings you can put down to get things started, but as you get things rolling within your cities, you will have to be more strategic about which buildings you put down before the production cost becomes too high. The next big change concerns the amount of cities you can have while keeping production reasonable. If you go to convert a town into the city and click this button, you will receive this warning. A city has increased production and increases the cost of non-warehouse buildings across your empire by 10%. This means that for every city you have in your empire, the buildings in every other city go up by 10% in cost. So not only is there a scaling mechanic in each city that kind of prevents you from snowballing building on top of building on top of building, there's a kind of worldwide, map-wide, empire-wide mechanic that stops you from stacking city on top of city on top of city because it makes the buildings really expensive. It's really encouraging you to find ways to use towns resourcefully to get those yields in your cities. This change has resulted in much more strategic decision making between your cities and your towns. We have 24 settlements in this game, and I'm about to win this game. In fact, I did win this game. You probably watched it on YouTube, right? But in my 24 settlements, I want to say 4 or 5 of them are cities, maybe 6, but I'm far below the 1-to-1 ratio I was having before. And you can see, even in a game I'm dominating with way less than half my settlements being cities, I am still yet to build every building in the cities I do have. I still have quite a few buildings to go. Not only have I not built every building, I'm nowhere close to getting every building, and the ones I do have are still pretty expensive in a city with high amounts of production. This has introduced a way more strategic balance of cities and towns, but not in a way that feels restrictive. In my 3 games on this patch, I found it to be really exciting. This is the kind of change I want to yes and. I think this change is brilliant and added a lot more decision making and strategic variety to Civ 7, but I want to see them take it further with the production of buildings. I'd love to have like a mechanic by which if I build a quarter, I intentionally get a little bit of that production back as a way to like try and focus your buildings on the adjacencies or something like that. Maybe that's a bad example or a bad mechanic. My brain is automatically churning as to how we can continue to improve the building mechanics when it comes to gold and production to make them even more strategic and more interesting. Overall, this change is a huge win for Civilization 7 and allows you to use towns and cities in more fun and interesting ways, and I think this was a brilliant decision by Firaxis to implement this. It's also resulted in me using a variety of town types I have never used before. If I go to Arapaka here, I believe this is an urban center. Because I can't get as many buildings in my cities, I'm using urban centers to be able to get more tier 1 buildings with yields that I'm looking for. Resort towns has also become a really cool and interesting option to get a little more happiness and a little more gold. I found celebrations and kind of gold purchasing to be very helpful on this patch, and so coming through and getting extra gold and happiness and kind of rural tiles with happiness yields has been great. You can see I can do it here. This natural wonder boost from this resort town is amazing. I have another resort town across the map here that is getting me some extra happiness and gold, which I'm really appreciative of. These are kind of town options I'd never really considered or used before, and it's forced me to think more about my towns since I have like 19 of them. I want to make sure I'm using them strategically, and that's amazing. The final aspect of the patch I want to talk about really quickly is the game balance. Game balance was a huge focus of the patch, and it's the part of the patch I got most wrong when I did my previews. I made these 2 videos, which were very complimentary of this patch overall before I played it, just kind of reviewing the notes, but had some major concerns about the game balance, as I always feel like these kind of games and these kind of developers with not just Civ, but all kinds of video games constantly take away fun, powerful options from gamers and kind of nerf them back towards the center, but don't buff anything else to make them fun or interesting. And games like this are best played when you have powerful options to really sink your teeth into. I'm happy to announce, though, I couldn't have been more wrong. There are a lot of balance changes across the whole game, and I'm not going to get into each and every one of them. I would just like to report back that after 3 games, I have found the game balance to be far better, far more strategic, and far more interesting to play. If you take a look at the resources menu here, you'll see they've changed a lot of them. Gold used to give you a way to purchase buildings very, very cheaply, which kind of snowballed the game out of control. They've now changed that to gold and happiness in all settlements. So I'm still getting 24 gold per turn and 24 happiness, which is good. It's not as good as it used to be, but it's more strategic. I have to think about it a little more. Gold is still powerful. This isn't a particularly gold-focused game. It's just kind of how it's worked out. And I have a huge army I'm paying maintenance on. I'm still collecting 1,600 gold per turn. But if I come in to make purchasing decisions here, each building kind of costs double that in a city with a lot of buildings. So I can still come and buy buildings, right? But it's going to take me 3 or 4 turns of gold to do that instead of just buying every building for cheap because I found the resources. Attributes were another area where they changed this. A lot of the trees had percentage-based things removed. You can see this was +3 to all yields per alliance. Now it's +3 influence and +5 happiness per age. So a lot of things have been changed in here. I was concerned again that it would take a lot of the fun options away, but I have found these trees to be no less powerful and strategic, just a little more balanced with the rest of the game. City-states were another place that got a little bit of an overhaul with the options and the types available. There are 2 new types of city-states. Both of these new types of city-states I found really interesting. You have diplomatic and expansionist ones. I found myself incorporating city-states more often because of Lakshmi Bai's abilities, but in my other 2 games as well, because it's a good way to get towns in places on the map you wouldn't otherwise get them, and because you're looking for more towns on this patch, it seems like a reasonable way to do that. The abilities you get when you become the suzerain of these city-states are a little more in line. Some have been buffed, some have been nerfed. No more real percentage options, or at the very least, it's based on city-state type, which is awesome. My only criticism of the city-state changes is that because there's now 2 more types of city-states, I'm often not getting a big enough variety for it to be like meaningful that I can sink my teeth into. For instance, if I get one that gives me, +X per scientific city-state, it's very unlikely I'm meeting more than like 2 of them on the map. There might be 10 city-states, maybe 11. They're split evenly. I might get 1 or 2 of each type on my map. So I feel like a city-state selector, so you can kind of choose your strategy like we had in Civ 6, would be very interesting. But otherwise, I think the city-state balance has been done well as well. Overall, I think this patch is a huge hit and the first really meaningful update from Firaxis that I think will bring players back to Civilization 7. If you are one of those folks who has not really tried the game since it released and you are feeling a little weird about it, feel free to hop in right now. Between some of the changes to how the age transitions work, allowing you to keep more of the things intact, and these kind of meaningful updates to game balance and the user interface and kind of how the game is structured and functions in this patch, I think you might have a better time. Now, there still is lots of work to do with Civilization 7. That much is still obvious. However, this was the first patch that made me really optimistic that we are going to land in a great place with this game, and gives me the chance to come on here and say, hey, if you have not been enjoying Civ 7 up in this point, maybe this is the time for you to jump in and give it another go. Maybe you'll enjoy it, and maybe you'll start putting like 1 game in every month, and then the next patch will come and you'll put in 2 every month. Maybe you'll get in and you still go, hey, this isn't for me, I'm going to wait for the next patch, or the patch after that, or the first big DLC update. Who knows, but I want to make sure you know that I think this patch is excellent, and that it's worth diving back in to check it out. That's it for me. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give me a like, hit that subscribe button, let me know what you thought in the comments. I can't wait to make more Civ 7 content. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.